All right, so we have two choices here to start with. Which one do you want to start with?
This one.
What made you choose that one?
Because it looks cool.
You like nonfiction, informational? So what do you know about informational books?
That they tell you about the animal or something else.
What else do you know about informational books? You can look through it if you want and kind of tell me what you're noticing about it.
That's about animals.
Let's take a look at the title. We always want to make sure we look at the title, and that gets us thinking about the way the author's going to approach this book. So what do you notice about the title? What does it say?
The reptile park.
Yeah, so what are you thinking after you read that?
That it's about reptiles.
And
At a park.
at a park, yeah, that's really, really important to keep in mind. It's kind of the angle that the author's taking. It's not all about reptiles. It might have a lot of reptiles, but it's really talking about these reptiles in the park. So that's an angle that's important to keep in mind when you're picking books out, to look at that angle. Okay, what else do you notice in the book? What text features do you notice? Do you know what I mean by text features?
No.
Yeah, so text features are like, here's the table of contents. So there's that. How many chapters do we have?
8.
8. And then here's another part of text features. What are these?
Glossary and index.
Yeah, so I bet you knew that, right? You just didn't know what they were called. So let's take a look at the glossary and index. And what do you notice about those? How do they help you as a reader?
If you can't find a word that you don't know what it means, it has it in the glossary, and then it has a definition.
Yeah, can you pick one out that we're going to read about? Which one?
Prey.
Prey, yeah. What does it say?
An animal that is caught and eaten by another animal.
Yeah, and then there's constrictors and frill, which is an extra set of skin covered. So connected, something really important about the glossary is you want to read that before you start reading. Do you do that at all when you?
No.
Yeah, so that's going to be a good strategy for you. Always go to the glossary because then you get yourself familiar with the words in the book, okay? And then the index tells us where a lot of those words are, right? So if you were looking here, where would you find gecko? What page?
Page 5.
Page 5, yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to read a little bit. Let's go to the beginning part, okay? That first page, and go ahead and get started.
I'm Nick. My family owns a reptile park, and I live at the park with my parents. Reptiles are cold-blooded animals that have backbones. Their skin is covered with scales. Most reptiles lay eggs on land.
All right, so I'm going to stop you there. Tell me something that you do after the first page, after you read the first page of a book. What do you do? Do you do any thinking?
Not really.
Okay, so I'm going to teach you something that I think is really important. It's always important to know how this book is kind of set up, okay? So when you read, I'm Nick, my family owns a reptile park, and I live at the park with my parents, what does that tell you how this is set up?
Like they're at a park that they own it.
And Nick's telling the story, okay? So he's telling this informational story about the park. That's important to know. So this Nick is telling us all about the park. So that's important to know. That's going to help you understand the book more. And that's why it says, I'm Nick, my family owns, and then he's starting to tell us facts and information about the reptiles, okay? So that's important to know. So after you read that first page or first couple pages, you should always stop and say, okay, how is this book set up? Who's telling the story? What structure is it? That's really important, okay? All right, so let's learn more about the reptiles. Go ahead and read this page.
There are different kinds of reptiles, such as lizards, snakes, crocodiles, alligators, and turtles. Reptiles live all over the world, except in very cold places. Let me tell you about some of the reptiles at the park.
So what did you learn on that page?
That different kinds of reptiles.
Did you already know that?
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you learn?
They cannot live in very cold places.
Did you know that? Yeah, so maybe you knew that and there wasn't really anything. What I learned was that they actually can live at a park. I never knew there was a park for just reptiles. Did you know that? Yeah, so that's something we learned. The other things we kind of knew already, but now we built our background knowing there's actually a park that just that'd be a cool place to visit, right?
Yeah.
That's probably why Nick is telling us about it, right? Okay, go ahead and read the fact box.
In cold weather, reptiles may lay in the sun to get warm. This is called basking.
To read that again, something didn't sound right when you read it. It might have sounded right to you.
In cold weather, reptiles may lie in the sun to get warm.
What did you notice there?
That I said.
May lay, yeah. And sometimes that's how we say it, but it's actually the correct way to make it sound right is may lie. Okay? Yeah. All right, so I kind of knew that, right? Is there a vocabulary word there that you learned though?
Cold?
You knew what cold was. Was there a new word here in that fact box?
Basking.
Did you know that word? No, so that's another thing we do as a reader. What is basking?
I don't know.
Read it and see if you can figure it out.
Read what?
Read this fact box and see if you can figure out the meaning of basking.
In cold weather, reptiles may lie in the sun to get warm. This is called basking.
So what is basking?
Like lying down and getting warm.
Yeah, what do we call it when we lay in the sun? We call it sunbathing,
Yeah.
right? Getting a suntan. Reptiles, it's called
Basking.
basking. So when we're reading these information books, you want to build your background. So when you read basking, you could read it, but if you didn't know what it meant, you want to stop and you want to think, you want to reread and think about that word, okay? So now you know the word basking. So when you're at the zoo and you're in the reptile section and they have a sun or they have a heat lamp, you can say they're basking in the heat, right? All right, let's read some more. Chapter 2.
Lizards. Most lizards have 4 legs, a tail, ears, and eyelids. Lizards live underground, on the ground. They're on rocks and in trees. Some lizards even spend time in water. Lizards can be herbivores, plant eaters, carnivores, animal eaters, or omnivores, plant and animal eaters.
What did you learn on that page?
That lizards can be herbivores, carnivores, and
Did you not know that?
omnivores.
You didn't know they could be all three, right? That's something I learned too. I actually thought they were only plant eaters. I didn't know they were animal eaters and animal, yeah. The other thing I learned is that they can spend time in water. I didn't know that. I thought they were only outside the water. So that's interesting. What do you call this?
A lizard.
Yeah, we call it a lizard, but actually it's not a lizard. What is this called here?
A central bearded drake.
Yeah, so this is a label, and this label tells us what it is. So we might think it is, right? And it's a certain kind, but now we have specific.
Yeah.
So it's a lizard, and then we broke it down, right? What is this little picture here? What are
Well-
these called? I think I just told you, but what do you call these when you? Put the name next to it.
That's the tail. Those are legs.
Yep.
Ear and eye.
Yeah, these are called labels. So
Yeah.
authors are going to use that. That's another text feature, okay? All right, so as a reader of informational books, like this summer, what are some things that you can do to help yourself with reading informational? A couple things that we did today that might be helpful for you over the summer.
Probably, like, if I don't know what it means, look in the glossary.
Yeah.
Or I could just read it again.
Or read the glossary first so you can get an idea, right? Yep. What about vocabulary? What could you do as a reader? You were able to say that word, but you didn't know what it meant, right? So what would you do going forward?
I would sound it out or break it up.
Yeah,
Or
but you
skip
were
it.
able to figure it out, so you didn't need to do that. You knew you could read it, but you didn't know the meaning of it. So what would you do in terms of knowing the meaning of it?
I would look up.
You could.
Glossary.
You didn't have to here.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I read it again.
You reread it again and you stopped and you were thinking, and that's what reading is. Reading is thinking. So those are a couple things that you can do over the summer, okay?
Oh,
All right.